bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Varendas, also known as Ricky Varendas. We have another Swapcast, the Tinfoil Ripple Farm Report, representing the Corbett Report, James Corbett, representing the Tinfoil Hat Podcast, Sam Tripoli, and representing the Conspiracy Farm Podcast today is UFC legend Pat Miletich. This is the second time we've done one of these. The first time we did it, Jeffrey Wilson from the Conspiracy Farm Podcast, the other host of the show, join us. Hopefully in future shows, he'll also be joining us. So check that out. All these guests have been on a bunch of times. So go back in the archives, check out past appearances. We've had tons of great conversations and really looking forward to doing more of these Tinfoil Ripple Farm Report shows. It's fun to get this many people together that are willing to talk about things they agree on, but also talk about things they disagree on, showing that you can have civil discussions and debate, and you're not stuck to your ideas, and you're willing to have your ideas challenged and share your ideas. It's really interesting. Plus, anytime you can kind of just bounce perspectives and stuff off people you respect, I think it's really beneficial. I always learn so much from these discussions. Hopefully you guys do too. Support these guests. Most of them have Patreon pages. If not, you can support them directly from their website on our YouTube channel called RV Theory 6, or you can just look up the Ripple Effect Podcast. I always have links to their websites and any social media pages they might have, so it's an easy way to connect with the guests and support the guests if you'd like to. It goes a long way. If every listener, downloader just supported $1, it would go a long way. I mean, bandwidth, storage, all this stuff costs money. I just bought a new mixer. You know, my old one was kind of having some issues, so I had to upgrade that. You know, all this stuff is, you know, like I said, it costs money. So, but if you can't support financially, share the show. That goes a long way. Also, I'm always telling you guys, you never know who's listening, who's clicking on that article or documentary or podcast that you like, that you might have found interesting. You never know who clicked on it and also finds it interesting, and you might slowly be changing their perspectives or maybe getting them to go down a rabbit hole that they weren't aware of. So that's super important. And these type of podcasts, I think, are super important too. Just like I said, to be able to show that you can have these civil discussions and with people that you don't necessarily agree on with everything, but on most things. You know, I don't want to act like we disagree on everything. This isn't a debate, but it's you know, a conversation doesn't have to be a debate, and it also doesn't have to be an echo chamber of just people regurgitating things you already agree with and that type of stuff. I don't think you gain anything from that. You know, it's like that saying, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I'm always making sure I'm in the right room with people who are smarter than me, who are going to help mold my perspectives and opinions, because they're going to have really well thought out ideas to share on certain topics and subjects. So that's it. Like I said, share, tweet, review, all that stuff. Support the shows. And if you like the music that you hear in the podcast, it's my music project called Theory 6, which is kind of taking a back seat, I should say, to the podcast with kids and limited time. Something had to give, and it's a music project for the time being. Maybe when the kids get a little older, I'll have a little bit more time to focus on the music. But for now, if you like the music that you hear, you can get it anywhere. You can get digital downloads. That's also in the show description. So if you go on our YouTube channel, you'll find links to Theory 6 music, so you can support the show that way too. All that money goes to supporting the podcast. And that's it. So thanks again, guys. Really hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Look at this.
What's up,
The
guys?
band is back together.
I hear you guys loud and clear. How do I sound? Everybody sound good?
Yep.
Yeah, everybody sounds good. Are we missing Pat?
Yeah.
I his number. I don't know what his number is. Hold on. Let me see if he can join us.
Yeah, I talked to Jeff earlier, and he's like, yeah, because he mentioned that he might not be able to make it, but he's like, yeah, Pat's definitely in. And so I just wrote him an email to Jeff, just letting him know that we're ready, and if Pat joins in, just let me know on Skype, and I can throw him into the call.
Perfect, dude. It's good to see you on camera, buddy, this time, you know? you graduated to FaceTime. That's great to see.
Yes. But yeah, well, the nice thing is I think Skype you can have up to, like 20 people on a conference call. So I don't know why we had that issue last time. And honestly, the conversation started, and I didn't want to stop the conversation and be like, hey, let me try this, let me try that. And I'm like, you know what, forget about it. Most people listen to podcasts anyways. They don't watch them. But we're a good group, good-looking group of guys, so it is nice to get all our faces on.
Really are.
The best looking guy.
I think sexy when I see this group. This is the Panty Dropper podcast right here.
New name, but yeah, we might as well start. I mean, we'll wait till we hear from Pat. If I end up getting a call or something from him, I will I'll end up putting him in the call. But thanks, guys. Thanks for being with me. I really appreciate it. The last podcast went really well. It's amazing. I don't know if you guys are getting a lot of this on your show, but I'm getting a lot of people telling me thank you that I'm doing a show, and then I think you guys are probably getting the same type of responses because you guys are doing a very similar type of show for being open-minded and not joining. Because right now it seems like now more than ever. And maybe it was always like this, but it just seems more obvious now, or more people are contacting me in regards of it. It's like people are, even in the alternative media, people are being tribal, where it's like you're either everything Trump does is good or everything he does is bad, or, even the Venezuela thing, which is huge in the news recently. It's like you're getting this rhetoric of communism and socialism to justify intervention again, and people are like falling for this trick over and over again. And I'm just like, dude, look at Libya. Look at the mess that we left in Libya, with open, trades out in the open, and human trafficking.
Trades,
slave trades. I mean, look at what's going on all over the world, and people still fall for this nonsense, and are you guys getting a lot of that type of response? Like people just thinking, because both of you are very similar to myself, and I think that's why we all get along, and why we do these podcasts, is that you just look at the evidence, and you know that it's all theater, it's just puppets, and people fall for this political nonsense. It's almost like I almost feel like it's almost like, no offense, women who I'm gonna offend them, like women gossip about what's going on in people's lives. Like I feel like people like the gossip of politics, like, oh, he's a scumbag, or he's a good guy, and the only reason he didn't pass that bill is because of that, and it's like you just like the drama of it, but they don't realize it's all theater and it's all bullshit. Oh, let's tell James's fans immediately that there is going to be swearing in this podcast.
I do get comments on that every time I'm on here. Someone complaining that, there's too many swears in this, or is someone thanking me for not swearing. So
yeah,
I am going to do my best to not swear.
Well, I think it's refreshing.
On that note, there are people who do occasionally do get thanks for that kind of what the sentiment you're expressing. But then there are the other people who call me a shill for not playing along with the game. But I mean, they're the oldest tricks in the book. These same old manipulations. We constantly bash our heads against the wall. How can people be falling for this time after time after time after time? But they're the oldest tricks in the book because they work. They work a lot of the time on a lot of the people. And they don't need to get everyone on board, just enough people to keep the system floating along, right?
For me, it's just, we call them goldfish on my show. They just only remember what's in front of them and nothing behind them, or what happened in the past. I always say, conspiracy theorists are more historians than anything. We're scorekeepers. We keep the score. We don't remember it. What I'm seeing a lot right now in the world of truth is a lot of parodying, a lot of just regurgitation of phrases, words, and thoughts said to them by people on the just in the news, or whether it's Twitter or anything like that, and just that, still holding, like, it's hilarious to me as, like, Russian collusion just dies, and NBC News puts out that there's nothing there, and then MSNBC doubles down that there is something there, and people will cling to that MSNBC thing, and it's not even that they think it's right, just they don't want to be wrong, and they're doubling down on not being wrong. It's almost like they'd rather be right than do right, and that's kind of what we're up against. Again, I'm on no sides. It's like within my show, we call it Ronin. We have no masters. We just I like you, James. I get called everything from gay, shill, Jew, alt-right, because only people hear when I make fun of their side. They never hear when I'm making fun of the other side, because to that makes sense. It doesn't register. Only when I call out their side does it matter. So I become this monster when they don't realize I kind of call out hypocrisy and tyranny on both sides.
Yeah, and go, James.
Well, I was just going to bring up. I was reading an article the other day on the AmericanConservative.com by Robert Mary. I don't know. It's not a great article overall, but he makes an excellent point about the narrative that controls people's reaction to the exact same set of facts. And he's talking in the context of this new revelation about the 25th Amendment and the deep state coup against Trump kind of thing. But he's saying those exact same facts mean exactly opposite things to people who believe narrative A, that, whatever, Trump is Hitler and blah, 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 or narrative B, the people Trump is the savior, blah, 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 blah. They can take the exact same facts and take them in exact opposite directions. This is a great thing. This is a wonderful thing. This is the civil servants doing their job and upholding the Constitution, or this is the undermining of the Constitution. This is the end of America from the exact same set of facts. And that's the point, really. We are controlled by narrative, not facts. And which narrative do you believe determines which way this exact same set of data can be interpreted?
A great point about that is the Steele dossier, dozer, whatever it is. I still don't know what to call it, but how like people will go, oh, nothing's been disproven in that. Well, nothing's been proven in it either. So it's like both sides are kind of right. So it's like, depending on what you're looking for. Yes, you can't disprove something that's never been proven, and you can't prove something that's never been disproven. So it's like you get whatever you want, and that's almost this kind of game that they have going on.
Yeah, you see people do it all the time. You have a conversation with somebody, and they just justify everything somebody they like. They'll just justify all their actions. They'll be like, oh, there's a bigger plan, or he had to do that because of this or because of that. But if somebody on the other side does it, it's like, oh, he's corrupt. It's this, and I'm like, do you not see what you're doing? You're contradicting yourself. And it's so amazing how people can't see through that, even if they're very logical people in regards to everything else. But it does seem like Trump is one of those presidents that people absolutely love with a passion or hate with a passion. There's like no in between. So you've created two extreme sides. There's no moderate. There's no, which is funny because when he first ran, the Republicans didn't really like him. The Democrats didn't really like him. And he actually said some things that made sense. The problem is he didn't do any of those things. And, he talked about the TPP. He talked, how that was bad. He called out all the politicians about how they took money from, from lobbyists and all this stuff, and from himself too, how he took money from Trump, and kind of like looked like he was kind of pulling the curtain back. But I think that's why a lot of people, they kind of looked at it like, okay, yeah, maybe there's a chance. But the thing is, you see it, and James, I mean, he executed it perfectly in his Fill the Trump or Filling the Swamp video. That at the end of the day, it's like the cabinet, the advisors, the people around him are always the same people. And when you look where the Mercers and all these people who gave him money and help, like it's just a lot of influence from the outside that people don't realize. And Sam's talked about it, numerous of times. It's like the people who are really pulling the strings, people who have serious influence, you don't know their names. They're not the typical, like, just the Koch brothers or the, the common, the Soros, people like to throw these names. And it's like, yeah, they have influence, but it's much more complex and intricate. A lot of times people say, they poo-poo a conspiracy because they're like, oh, people believe in conspiracies because it's easier than believing the truth. And it's like, no, a lot of times it's much more complex. If you look at the conspiracy, it's much more complex.
Yeah. But that actually feeds into what you were saying before about people wanting the drama. And I think that is an important point of what's going on here. I mean, this is infotainment to a large extent, and no better I mean, a literal example of that is the fact there's a reality TV star as president. I mean, that says something about what's going on here. People want the reality TV drama. A man who literally took part in that, fake wrestling nonsense garbage. You can go watch clips of him in wrestling and then watch him, delivering a speech from the president's podium. It's the exact same thing, right? People want the infotainment. And honestly, it's much more interesting about real world events to have that kind of drama and infotainment than about some, no one watches. We used to all watch the same show because it was always on at the same time and, broadcast to everyone at the same moment. But now we don't have that cultural thing bringing us together. So now politics is the infotainment of the 21st century. And unfortunately, it means we don't talk about anything of substance. We're talking about what's dangled in front of us. And of course, all of the things that we're being fed right now are things that are dangled in front of us because it doesn't fundamentally affect the system.
I couldn't agree more, man. I could not agree more. I actually believe that this kind of, here in the States, I'm watching the, network television, whether it's news or entertainment, and what they're doing doesn't make any sense to me. So it almost is like the ratings, they know what the ratings are so bad that they're just doing stuff to kind of get us all to fight with each other. So we stop watching this. They actually kill off this old medium to move us to this new medium of internet where there are no rules. So like with the news, there's somewhat kind of established news that we demand this sort of level of respect and excellence, whether it's met anymore, who knows, but this kind of standard that we kind of hold. And when it goes to the internet, it's the Wild West, man. There could be propaganda, it could be real, it could be fake, and it doesn't matter. So they want everybody to go to the news, go to the internet to get their news, because you won't know it's real. And I'm going to get news from one source, you guys are going to get news from another source, you're going to get news from another source, and we're not going to get the same information. So we're literally living in all these almost parallel realities where like we're all in the same place, but we have a different view of it, and we're never going to connect. And that, to me, is all done on purpose so that we don't come together. I mean, for me, dude, this movement with misinformation has really stemmed from the fact that, I mean, if you look back at Vietnam, that was a weird moment for this country where like the powers that be realized we'd gotten so smart that we all came together and said, no more war. And you see all those videos, and a white man, a black man, a Mexican woman, straight, gay, everybody marching together to end these wars. And I feel like that scared them. And so now, like, since this 19-year war we've been in, all we're seeing is like misinformation, fighting. This guy lying about getting lynching, and everybody's fighting over it. And it wasn't true. And this stuff is like, I think there's just a lot of agents of chaos and agents of provocateurs that are just out there to keep us from focusing on the fact that we are stormtroopers right now, and we're kicking in brown people and poor people countries' doors and stealing their resources, and we don't know what's going on there. We're sending our sons and daughters to die in banker wars, and they don't want us to focus on that, so we fight with each other.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Nothing new under the sun. This whole, I mean, we could get into the meta conspiracy then, because the 60s counterculture was itself partially engineered. Sure. And we know all of, the CIA distributing the LSD and all of that. But even beyond that, you had back in the 40s, starting, I think, 45-ish, they started with the cybernetics conferences, where they brought together all of these people who were basically going to be the leading scientists in MKUltra. And other, related fields, who were talking about the best way to engineer society as a whole, mass psychology. And how do we do this? Well, basically, reduce mind to brain. It's just a physical, biological machine. So all we have to do is figure out what inputs to put in to get the expected output. It's all just one big algorithm. And how do we do this? And they knew, well, in order to basically get all of those perturbations out of the system, the things that we don't like creativity and things like that, humans acting on their own and doing things we can't calculate. Well, we have to have change agents in there to direct them in this direction or that direction so that they can't get too far outside of the system. This has been talked about and researched for at least 70 years by this point. And a lot of that history, of course, who knows about that history, but it's there and it's documentable. And people like True Stream Media did a 4-hour documentary on the minds of men, laying this out, how all these crazy, MK Ultra type experiments were part of a much broader system of control that is now so far refined. I mean, that was 70 years ago. What are the secret conferences that are going on today that we might find out about 70 years from now, if there's anyone with a thinking brain left to find out about them at that point?
Couldn't agree more, man. I mean, just look at this thing with the Colin Kaepernick. I don't know if you guys have seen this, where they settled out of court. There'll never be the documents out. The minimum, I think, is 50 mil. And it was all done on purpose. Like, these billionaires who own these NFL teams, they make the NFL team is their side project. Like, it's like when a guy's a basketball player and he's a rapper, it's like that's his side project. That's what these teams are. So these guys all make their money in real, like, oil, stock markets, all the stuff where the real money is, right? So they use this side thing that's a huge thing in America, but it's their side thing. So they have no problem with kind of messing with it a little bit. So you create this chaos about men, black men kneeling and how disrespectful that is to the military. So now, once again, we have black versus white, and chaos breaks out. And then they just decide to end it. They throw this guy 50, 60 mil, and then we move on without any real understanding what was going on and what was said in those emails. And I guarantee you, it was like, let's just cause chaos. I mean, like, the biggest owner in the NFL is from Walmart, man. The rest of them are oil tycoons. I mean, these guys have a lot of money in getting us all fighting. They have a lot invested in getting us all to fight with each other. So this thing, knee not knee, is a great issue for them to fight with each other, get us all fighting with each other.
So I'm not too familiar with the Kaepernick story. What emails are you referring to?
Okay, so basically there was, after this spree of shooting, Colin Kaepernick, who was doing well as a quarterback, was starting to slide. His old coach had left, new coach wasn't playing that well. So him and a bunch of other African-American players started taking knees to fight, police brutality. That was then spun into disrespecting the military, and then all chaos broke loose, and you couldn't stop talking about it, and everybody was fighting all over it. What? And then at the end of the day, but there was all these emails and documents about what that was really going on that will never be released. They all signed gag orders that they'll never discuss the actual guts of the case, and we'll never know. But everybody involved made a lot of money off it.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that part of it. I know that, and this is the thing, is they use nationalism you go to I went to a local, like, small hockey team game yesterday with the kids and the family, and everybody's, putting their hand on their chest during the national anthem, and I'm looking around and I'm just like, everybody's so proud of that flag, and it's like, yeah, it represents a lot of good shit, but also represents a lot of bad shit too. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's slowly just brainwashing you into believing, like, whatever this flag tells you is the right thing to do. You just go along with it. Put your hand on your heart and just know that we're always the good guys and we're always out. And it's like, it's amazing how nationalism and something as that you think is harmless as being patriotic can be used for bad. And even the Kaepernick thing, the story goes, I believe, that he didn't want to stand up for the national anthem, and then he talked to some veterans. Some veterans said, well, a way of protesting but yet still being respectful is kneeling. And he was actually told by veterans, because they're like, well, kneeling is a way of showing, respect, but it's not completely disrespecting people. And so it really was blown out of proportion. But another thing people don't tell you is all those jets to fly over, the Super Bowl game and all that stuff, that's all paid by taxpayers. All these, all this stuff that they do for, for entertainment, having Marines there and all this, all this stuff. I mean, it's all paid by taxpayers for the purpose of making people feel patriotic and kind of falling for it. And maybe it's me being a foreigner that I don't know if it was maybe just me being a foreigner that I just didn't fall for it, but it is one of those things where you look around and you feel like you're in some church you don't belong to, and everybody's like really deep into this trance except you, and you feel like this outsider, and you're just like, it is. Yeah. And again, I can't say, America's one of those countries, like, we have the freedom to have this conversation. We're not completely, spied on and or have no freedoms. But yet it doesn't. And it almost seems like if you say anything negative about the country you live in, then it's like, why don't you go live in another country? Why don't you, and what was it, Barry Crimmins, who had the joke, like, oh, the reason why I don't go live in another country is I don't want to be a victim to America's foreign policy. So even though I complain about it, I live here because I don't want to be a victim to this is the safest place to be, and but it's one of those tricks where it's like, if you speak out against something, you say they've done any harm, people look at you like you're this anti-American person, and it's like, no, I love this country, but the most patriotic thing you can do is speak out against the bad shit, because and the government's only it's not just the government that represents the country, the people represent the country, the culture, the music, the friends you have, the family that was raised in that country. Like, unfortunately, and you talked about Vietnam's a perfect example. There's a lot of people who lived in this country who were anti that war. So what the government was doing wasn't representative of what the people wanted. They were just kind of doing their own shit anyways, And then it's just, you have to talk the public into kind of going along and use propaganda. Yeah, I probably should have had a question at the end of that long rant.
Well, look, I mean, we're broadly on the same page with regards to these problems. The real question is, what's the solutions? And I think there's
solution?
Three kind of meta ways that we can handle and approach this. One is to say, this is human nature. Human nature is such that we will en masse kind of flock to these rituals and these symbols, and that's who we are. So the people who are in charge of this system know that, so they take advantage of that by giving you this piece of cloth to worship or whatever it is, so they can all rally around and hitting team red versus team blue. They know how to pit us against each other because of the way our psychology is. That's human nature. So in that sense, if we take that route, then our response will be, well, then we should make use of that, and we should create our symbols, and we should direct, human psychology in this way so that we can get people on board with the truth, right? Another response would be to say, well, no, it's not human nature. It's not immutable. There are people who slip through the cracks, the crazy-eyed conspiracy theorists, right, who can get out of that engineered system. So maybe we should be trying to get other people out of the matrix, jack them out. It's not human nature, or it doesn't have to be that way. And then the third response would be to say, well, I can't control what other people are doing or thinking. I can't affect that directly. I can control what happens to me and my mind. So I'm going to withdraw myself from this. And I think there's merits to each of those approaches, but I wonder which one appeals to you guys the most.
So, I mean, I like popping minds. I mean, that's kind of the fun stuff, but I've learned that we have to do it scientifically. I think maybe it's a little bit of both. That's a great question. I mean, I do think herding is pack mentality is, I don't know if it's human nature, but it's definitely animal nature, mammal nature, which we all are. So this whole thing is like us versus them, and I think the United States is and Europe is this too, is like this new kind of movement where it's like, we're not all of one race. We're not all of one group. So it's not as easy to tell who's on whose side. Back, if I go to China, who's Chinese. It's like everywhere, but you go to parts of Europe and part of the United States, we don't all look necessarily alike. So we're trying to create connections through philosophies instead of ethnic groups, and I think that's what they're using to their advantage to get us all to fight with each other. I think it's a little bit of both. I think we have to be like, listen, our nature is to be us versus them, but we gotta understand there is no us, there is no them, there's all of us. And we're all, in my opinion, it sounds like some kumbaya stuff, but it's like, dude, if they're bombing them, eventually it's going to come for us. When we talk about Venezuela and socialism, or we talk about Greece and how this is a socialist country that needs a bailout, well, what's going on with the United States and China? When China is just bailing us out constantly, sending us money to make up the gap for the money we don't have for this military that we got. What happens when they pull their notes? we're going to become Greece very quickly. We're going to become Venezuela very quickly. So this notion that this capitalist society, which this country's running on a capitalism that was not the capitalism that made us great. This is like a cronyism capitalism that through time, all these deregulation has made it into cronyism. So, I mean, we got to watch ourselves, man. When we start getting us versus them, we start demonizing people, we start falling for the same propaganda over and over again, it won't be long till it's turned on us, man. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. And that's the message I think we got to get to everybody. They can go for them, but they'll eventually come for us. Like we see in like these super liberal, I don't know if you call them progressives, where they're just attacking all the alt-right guys or the right. And they don't remember that censorship came right to left before. Book burning, making people's lifestyles have to be behind closed doors or in dark rooms. Like that was the censorship. Now it's the other way around where you're not like, oh, if you hurt feelings, you're a bad guy, we got to get rid of you. It will come back around again. And that's what you have to understand. If they're doing it to them, they'll eventually do it to you. And I think that's a message we got to get out. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a really important topic, especially in the alternative media, is the censorship, the fact that you say anything and people will say they're you're offending this person or you can't say that and you can't, it's, even the, not to bring up Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook thing, but the interesting thing about that was the fact that just him questioning it was such a crime. And my thing was like, okay, well, has anybody looked into it? Has anybody looked at what, is there any dots that he's connecting to the claims? There's so many times that these stories are just like, that's ridiculous to question. How dare you? And nobody looks into it. And I'm not saying it was fake or it wasn't fake or whatnot. There was some parts of the story that didn't make sense. And I think that the same way I think it's ridiculous if you're in Germany, you can't talk about the Holocaust or whatever. I think no conversation should be off the table. I think people should have the freedom to talk about anything they want, no matter how crazy it sounds or how ridiculous. I mean, because you look at history, I mean, if we're talking about the Earth being round when everybody thought the Earth was flat, that sounded crazy until eventually people realized, and now I guess we're going backwards again, but realized that the Earth was round. But I think it's really important to look at all conversations. You talked about James reading an article on a conservative website. I think that's another thing that's a huge issue is the fact that people will just live in an echo chamber of just reading things, reading what articles from people that they already agree with on websites that they already agree with. And there's been times I've talked to people and I'm like, you know what, maybe you should watch this documentary or I'll send you this article. And before they read the article or do anything, they say, oh, what's his face wrote it, that liberal a-hole, I'm not going to read anything from him. He's all liberal, whatever, blah. Or the opposite, the same thing happens on the other side. It's like, oh, that alt-right guy, he's crazy. It's like you can get, people might be a extremist on one side, but somebody who's an extremist on the left who's trying to expose Trump might actually do some actual journalism and find something that he did and expose a story, maybe not for noble or good, pure reasons, maybe for selfish reasons of trying to make him look bad, but it doesn't mean that you ignore the facts. And same thing on the other side. So I think you see a lot of that too, where just people will ignore any information from a person just if it's Abby Martin's, it's like, oh well, she's a socialist, so screw her work, or if it's somebody on the right, like screw that it's like you don't have to believe everything somebody says, but if you find good information on somebody's website or they write a good article, look at it, to consider it, and then you filter out the bullshit. But you doesn't mean somebody can't make a good point just because you don't agree with them.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, actually, because last weekend in my subscriber newsletter, I linked to an article by Caitlin Johnstone about how to tell if someone is controlled opposition, something like that. And the whole article is basically saying, you'll never know. You can't know. You'll never see into the minds of other people. You don't know what their secret intention is. Maybe they're secretly acting a certain way so they can get you on board so that they can sell you, blah, blah, blah. The whole point of the article is you don't know, you'll never know, you can't tell. So if there is something that they say that you agree with, that's useful, that's valuable, information you can use, then great, bring that on board and use that. And don't look to them as some kind of all-encompassing savior that you have to agree 100% or 0%. You can use information whenever you find it. And it's funny because some of the comments on my own site from some of the people in the comment section are basically saying, well, yeah, but Caitlin Johnston is controlled opposition. She's a shill, and completely missing the actual point of that article. The point, which even, it's saying basically, even if I am some controlled opposition shill, whatever, you can agree with this. You can use this piece of information and detach it from the source that it's coming from, which is something that I've attempted to articulate many times over the years. It's an uphill battle because you're exactly right. The first thing that people will do when they encounter information they don't want to hear is attack the source.
Yeah,
attack the source, because everyone knows that's the way to dismiss something that you don't want to hear. Is there's got to be a problem with the source. Done. And what's the perfect example of that? You dare to question the 97% consensus of climate scientists. You're funded by big oil.
Yeah.
No matter if there's any shred of a proof of evidence of that. Of course, because I dare to question the 97% consensus, that has been pointed at me. Kind of humorously, there's a site, the Smog blog, that basically does this. Every time anyone questions anything, they're funded by big oil. And I had a sort of a sister website years ago called climategate.tv that I started, where I was posting, articles questioning this 97% consensus. And the funny thing was, as soon as I did this, the Smog blog posted a thing on their blog saying, the climate deniers have their own TV station now. How do they afford this? It must be big oil, which is hilarious to me because not only am I the creator of How Big Oil Conquered the World, talking about the oil industry and the horrible things it's done over the years, but also climategate.tv was literally it was a website. It wasn't a TV station. It cost like $5 a year for the domain or whatever it was and a free website template. It was nonsense. But of course, the first thing they do is attack the source. Someone's giving out information we don't like. Let's just call them funded by big oil or whoever. And, problem solved. We don't have to think about them ever again.
Couldn't agree more. You see this a lot where if it's not one of the three-letter networks websites, they don't agree with it. Hangthebankers.com. Like, I'm supposed to believe that one. But, the history, the demonization of YouTube videos is got to be systematic. It's got to be done by people in power. And here I am calling people shills. But, it's got to be done because the history of mainstream media has been filled with so many lies over the years. For people to defend that versus a guy making a YouTube video. The best video, what will it get? 500,000 views, 1 million views, whatever that is. But you have these networks now that are only getting 1 million views. But the amount of propaganda they put out, why would you ever believe people who collect checks from like Rachel Maddow could never get a job that pays her what she gets paid right now doing her show. Unless she became a power forward in the NBA and came off the bench, she's never going to get $8 million to do anything ever again. So why would you believe anything she has to say when it's been proven over and over? This whole group are the same people who sold us on weapons of mass destruction. We know that was a lie. Okay, so why are we sitting there agreeing them with whatever else they're saying to us, whether it's Russiagate or whatever's going on in Venezuela? There are people who show you the patterns of these guys, and you can watch it happen in real time. Yet they don't want to believe that because they just got to believe that's something that's shiny and that this independent guy is so evil that he wants to put out this whole thing out. Rachel Maddow is just taking money from corporations to spread this lie, and he's got to be up to something and he's got to have an alternative motive. And they just go off because it's like the flat earth people and whatever you believe in. I don't really care. I don't care about flat earth. I know it's a big issue for everybody, but to me, believing in the two parties to me is more deadly than when you think we live on a flat surface, a round ball, or a simulation. My life will never change, whatever it comes out to be. We know what we all want to believe, and we're fine with that. But the two parties, that's more deadly to me. And it's just, and the fact that people are going nuts over these videos. Oh my God, YouTube is ruining everything. What is it ruining? It's only killing the old mechanism and medium that we all know was completely corrupted by first Reagan, or probably Nixon, Reagan, then Clinton. They ruined it. They ruined it. And like, I don't know why you still want to believe it when they've been caught lying over and over again.
Well, I think the YouTube thing is interesting because how many times have you found a good researcher on YouTube who made a really good video making a really good point, and then you'll send it to somebody like, oh, he's a YouTuber, and they just kind of, it's like, why is this researcher on YouTube? Why can't his journalism be equal? Like, just look at the evidence, look at the information, and I mean, I know James has done a video on Noam Chomsky in the past about his how he seems to ignore 9/11 quite a bit, and which is hilarious because it's like he believes all these other things, manufacturing consent, and he knows about Edward Bernays and how the people are trying to influence the population and social control, but yet and he knows all the other war crimes that the U.S. has done, but 9/11 seems completely unbelievable. But the thing is,
and again, what do we do with that? Do you then throw away all of the valuable work that Noam Chomsky has done on issues that he is right about because he's wrong? So very, very wrong about a certain subject. Does that mean that we then throw out all of the actual information that he's given out over the years? Of course not. It means you use the information that's valuable and you discard what's not, and you don't worship people. You look at information. And that's, again, maybe that's human nature. We want people. We want some savior. We want some person who is 100% right about everything that we can just listen to, because that's the easiest way. Just listen to this person. They're right about everything.
I live in Hollywood, and, the Me Too movement has basically been fostered here and, shoved down our throats out of here. I've been pretty vocal that I think it was a giant psyop. And there's my friends on the other side that have been the ones who have been very much into it. And for me, I tell them, it's like, dude, we agree on 99% of stuff. We don't need to flamethrow a friendship because we don't agree on one subject. And I say that to a lot of the liberal friends of mine. It's like, you and I probably agree on most stuff except for like guns and Hillary Clinton. That doesn't mean our friendship of 15 years needs to go out the door because we don't agree on one thing. I do not want to live in a world where I only am friends with people that agree with me. I would love all the information. And listen, man, through recovery, dude, I'm in recovery, and like, I've learned to like, if you're wrong, you just, hey, man, I was wrong about that, dude. I admit it. I'm going to be out here. I'm going to tell you I was wrong about that. There's nothing wrong with that, man. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I'm flawed. And I'm going to get a lot right, but I might get some wrong, too. And there's nothing. We are more alike than we are different. And politically, it's the same thing. We don't have to agree on, like, conspiracies. Like, if you don't see it the exact same way everybody sees a conspiracy, you're either wrong or you're a shill. It's like, no. We agree on 90% of this. We don't agree on these little bitty parts. It's like me and Ryan Dawson. I love Ryan Dawson. He's wonderful. We kind of have a disagreement on the Israeli art students. He doesn't think they were in there. I think they were in the building. Doesn't mean I don't agree with 99% of the things that guy says, because he's a wonderful researcher and I love when he's on my show. But I wouldn't flamethrow my friendship with him because we disagree on Israeli art students. It's just a tiny little detail in this bigger thing that we all agree on.
Yeah, 9/11 is a touchy topic because it showed how everybody fighting for the same thing can turn on each other. And it's amazing how 9/11, how that worked out. You saw people that would fight and argue over these details, and it's like, does it really matter? Aren't we all fighting for the same thing, exposing the fact that there was a crime that happened, there was a conspiracy that happened, nobody went to prison, people died, and there was a giant cover-up. And it's like, no, well, that's not important. Let's argue about, did a plane hit the Pentagon or did a plane not hit the Pentagon? It's like, and again, like that we end up eating ourselves and just...
Yeah. Do you think the JFK conspirators didn't learn anything from the reaction to the JFK cover-up? Of course they did. And what's one of the main lessons is the intense territorialization of that field of study. So that now, I mean, every time I've ever had anyone on to talk about JFK, it's like stepping in a landmine field, because someone will say something that someone else, some other researcher, oh no, but that was debunked 37 years ago in this book by this person, and so this person's a shill, and they're probably working for the CIA. I'm going to come on your program to refute what that guy said, and it's just a big landmine. And 9/11 has turned into the same thing now.
But it's funny because I did that JFK special with Jeff Morley, James Eugenio, and Russ Baker, and it's funny because I knew that there was going to be a lot of stuff they disagreed on, right? And if they weren't together talking, and somebody couldn't say, hey, you know what, this is my perspective, it's because even there was things that because Jeff Morley, like everybody kind of has a different, even JFK is kind of similar to 9/11. People like I've had Lamar Waldron on, who's written a bunch of books on it. He focuses on the mob. You get the guys who focus on the CIA. You get the guys who focus on whatever. But when you get them all together, and it's funny, like I forget what specifically it was, but it was like I asked Jeff about something. He's like, no, I don't think. Oh, it was Alan Dulles. He's like, I don't think Alan Dulles knew what was going on, which kind of blew my mind. And then I'm like, James, what do you think? You know, James D. Eugenio. And he goes on his spiel and explains why he thinks he knew. And then Jeff kind of had a turn in opinion a little bit. You saw him transition a little bit. And I think it's really important. And that's why I try to do those shows. And I try to do these shows where you get people with slightly different opinions because I think when you put people together and you actually have a discussion about it, they're much more likely to get along and be like, you know what, you actually made a point, than just have people say, hey, I don't agree with that guy's research, or he doesn't agree with mine, but you never really get somebody's opportunity to fully express what they don't agree with or disagree with, or express their opinions. Because a lot of times, let's be honest, like a lot of times people will say this is somebody's opinion, and then you go and research, you're like, oh, that wasn't actually their opinion. You've kind of skewed it a little bit. So, but I think those type of discussions are really important. It's important to get people together who don't agree. I've had Ryan Dawson on my show. I disagree with him on some stuff too, and honestly, we talked about loose change, and he's very opinionated about how he thinks it's like complete bullshit, and I'm like, wait. Like, and this is just my personal opinion, but I think even if some of the stuff in the film you don't agree with, like, and this is just my personal opinion, like I said, I've had Jason Burmis on. He was one of my first guests on the show. That film was so important because it planted the seed of doubt, and it started the road down a rabbit hole where maybe you found James's work, maybe you found Ryan Dawson's work, maybe you find other people's work, and so I think it's not as important to say, hey, you know, that was complete crap, or that was complete crap, and kind of talk shit about it. But I think it's much more important to say, hey, if somebody puts out work, like, we're all going to be wrong sometimes. I mean, we've done a lot of episodes. We're going to be wrong. You're going to, if I went back and I had the tolerance to hear some really shitty episodes I did in the beginning of this podcast, I'm sure I would find a lot of my opinions that have transitioned in time and changed.
You're allowed to, dude. You're allowed to. Ryan Dawson's a very opinionated man. I'm sorry I brought him in because he's not here to say anything. He's done a lot of research, but at the end of the day, you, me, him, we all agree that it didn't go down the way it is. So, I mean, I would never want anyone to think that, that we don't agree on this stuff. He's passionate about that. I'm passionate about that Michael Jordan's a better basketball player than LeBron James, and I get super passionate, and I get why he can get super passionate about that. But at the end of the day, we all have the same mission. And I don't know if the mission is to expose the truth, but just for me, it's more about, I think we're not conspiracy theorists, in my opinion. We're historians. And I think we talk about the unreported news from a historical standpoint. And we've kind of been labeled as conspiracy theorists to give people who don't want to hear what happened an out, because things are going too good in their lives, man. I like being in Hollywood. I know a lot of these people who are very vehemently anti quote unquote conspiracy. And I think because deep down inside you go, well, I believe this, but they won't ever go on the record, which is fine because things are going too good for them. And if you sit there and go, something's going on, it means you're either participating in it or you got to stop what you're doing and start going, hey, what's going on here? Or they have kids and they don't want to believe that they're bringing these kids into this awful world that's going on. And for me, I don't think it's an awful world. I think we have a small group of people who are the same people who have terrorized humanity over the millenniums. And I don't know if we'll ever stop them. I don't know if it's possible. You know, you said last time, James, that it doesn't have to be this, like this, that we can all come together. I still have hope about that. But for us, the conspiracy people, we're just historians. We're no different than someone who's an expert in Roman times or, you know, in the medieval times and can tell you all the queens and all the kings and all. I don't think we're any different than that. We've just been labeled crazy people because we take truth to power, and that scares some people, or that's at least what they want us to think. That's my opinion.
Honestly, that you bring up something that annoys me more than anything else. I get a lot of people, you know, in their day-to-day life, they may secretly have their suspicions or doubts, but they don't want to go out with it and out on a limb and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. But I've heard from people in journalism, journalists whose name people would know, who come and say, you know, I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for doing it. But no, I'm not going to come on your show. I would never do that. That is very frustrating because, again, who's ever going to know? Who's ever going to understand what's really happening behind the scenes of these people who are being paid to tell you lies? And they're secretly, yeah, we know, but we can't really say anything. And they won't say anything because, exactly as you say, it's comfortable for them.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I just think it's amazing what people do for a paycheck, and it's just like no paychecks ever. There's a minute of euphoria when you see a paycheck, but at the end of the day, it's like you got to live in this world you created. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying I walk on water or anything, but I try to be true to people around me. And I have a lot of empathy for people. I think we're missing a lot of empathy. And I think that's another thing about conspiracy theorists is like we're historians, but we also see that there's people getting hurt. And like, if we just can't sit around and co-sign on it, man. Like, I live in LA. I look out my window right now. I see palm trees and green trees, and I go, what a wonderful time to be alive. And I know there's people in Yemen that are like, why was I born into this world? And how my country that I pay taxes to, that I have to pay tax to, or else I'll go to jail and they'll make an example of me. That if I don't pay taxes into this thing, which is straight up thievery, you know, that an outside entities make me pay taxes to them, that I'm not even part of my government, that so they can fund the war machine, so they can have stormtroopers that are terrorizing people around the world. And that's hard to me. So the only thing I can do, because people always go, what are you going to do about it? I do the only thing I can do, which is shed light onto it, let people see what's really going on, and hopefully something grabs root and sprouts, and you can see it happen in real time. And that's, to me, the amazing thing about what we do, is when we see it happen in real time, you're like, oh, I wasn't wrong. You know, this whole thing about the Pfizer report and Russiagate. We were all saying this before. Nothing's there. And not that Trump's a good guy at all. We don't think he's a good guy. But at this thing, on this issue, it's not real. It's a made-up thing. And because they can't go after him for what they really should be going after him, which is being a war pig, man. Because all their bosses signed the checks, make money off of war. So they can't call them out on that. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, I think empathy is a really important point, because we've all done podcasts and episodes on the pedophilia thing. I've had Matthew Valentes. You had him on too, Sam, I believe, from the Open Secret film, from also the Brian, whatever his name is, that
Singer.
No, not Brian Singer. The guy who did the Franklin Scandal book. I forget, Nick Bryant, I believe, something like that. But great. But these podcasts, doing these, and I'm sure, let me know if you guys agree with me, like talking about this stuff, especially when, you probably, James and I have kids. I'm sure you have, little ones in your family that you love.
Somewhere out there, I got kids. Somewhere out there.
But the thing is, it's really hard to do these episodes. Like, it's hard because it pulls at your heartstrings, and you hear about what's happening, and what you hear personal stories, and you hear about how evil and you put yourself in the position of the parent that has the thing happen to the child, or even put yourself as a child, like just being tortured and scarred and traumatized forever. It's not easy things to talk about, but we talk about it because my heart hurts, and it's the only thing I feel like I can do is talk about it and put it out there to let people know this stuff does happen. It's not one of those things where it only happens in movies and we think it happens, it's all bullshit. It's a huge issue. There's that documentary, Missing 411. It's about how many kids go missing in state parks, and they have like zero database on any of it, so you can never look into it. You can never. And there's this one guy who worked for a state park, was a high-ranked guy who ended up writing the book and I believe doing a documentary. And he's like, this is ridiculous. He's like, there's no database, and you can't follow up on anything. Thousands of kids just go missing. Like, parents will turn around, kids are playing here, and it's like, and I'm not saying it's connected, but I'm saying there's a lot. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And when people bring stuff up like that, it seems completely like a fantasy, like it's crazy, like a horror movie, some theme you would see in a horror movie. But this stuff really happens. Like, Seville, which you did a great documentary or a short podcast documentary type thing on the Seville guy, the UK English guy who's friends with the royal family, and only after he passed away did everybody speak up and say things. And even the Penn State stuff, look at the cover up there. There's I believe a district attorney that went like missing and all this stuff, and he was so, and there's tons of money involved, and James has done great videos on the DC Madam, and anytime you expose how sick and sexually sick and or whatever those in power are, it's not, those people disappear, something bad happens to them, and it's hard to talk about, and it does pull your heartstrings, but somebody has to, because if people like us don't have those hard conversations, it's going to be one of those things where ignorance is bliss. And it's funny because I'm thinking about James's wife. I know we've talked about this, and I know Sam's talked about his girlfriend, how we all live with the same type of women who, to them, ignorance is bliss. They don't care about any of this stuff that we're talking about, and nearly as much as we do. And it's okay for some people to go along like that, but you also need people like us who are willing to have those hard conversations and are willing to talk about this stuff, because if not, then who will? And nobody talking about it means it's going to continue.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
And there is something to the idea that you can be kind of traumatized from second degree, I guess, something like that. Because I just talked about this on my Propaganda Watch the other week. I just did that TSA episode of my podcast, and I got to a point researching that I just couldn't watch any more videos. Watching, children being molested there and screaming and crying, and the parents trying to go, oh, just follow the rules, just follow the orders, it'll be okay. And just watching that over and over, it's truly traumatizing after a while. It's really hard to put those kind of things together.
Yeah, doing this type of research isn't easy. People think that it's all like, it's just fun because it's this and it's that, and it's just, oh, we're and there is some sense of like, you almost feel like a investigative journalist when you find dots that are, you connect the dots and you're like, holy shit, this guy's friends with that guy. Or, oh, I didn't know this guy was CEO of this company that had interest in, and that part is kind of fun. It is. I can't say otherwise. It's fun when you connect those dots. But when you get to the really dark stuff, it's not easy, and it is. Even watching your TSA video was hard, so I could just imagine, actually making it. But these things need to be exploited. They need to be exposed and highlighted, and somebody does need to do that hard work. And because if not, then we're all just sheeple, and we go along with the herd. And then that's exactly. To feel, and you get, I'm sure a lot of people, say this to you, and they've said it to me, like, well, what can you do? What can you really change? It's like, sparking these conversations is creating ripples of change. There's people out there who are going to think twice next time they go to TSA. They might be outspoken, and we know groupthink. We know when one person's outspoken, it's much more likely that the next person's going to be outspoken. It's going to be, you see those videos where nobody helps somebody on the ground, but the second somebody helps, then all of a sudden everybody comes. So it's like these.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. What is culture other than people modeling a certain action that then gets picked up by other people. I mean, that's what it is, and that's how it starts. And yeah, ripple effect is a great name for it, because that is exactly how it happens. And that's what I talked about in that TSA video. That's also something that's really hitting home because of some of the research I'm doing right now on some of these roundtable groups and things from a century ago. And the point that keeps coming home is that these, planners of the world, these conspirators who control everything, no, they really don't. What they do is seed ideas into the political discourse or into the popular discourse that they hope will flower, and other people will start to pick them up, and they can change the direction of society because of ideas. It is ideas that guide history, not people. It's not people controlling every single thing that happens. It's controlling your mind. And that's why ultimately I do think this is a positive and hopeful message. It's the solution that no one ever thinks of as a solution and no one wants to hear. But the reason there is this concerted effort to propagandize every single person on the planet, and they're putting all their money and effort and energy into feeding you false ideas, is because it does matter. Ideas really do matter. And if you break out of that narrative construct they've got you in, if you really can break out of that into something else, that is the real way of escaping the system. And when you model that for other people, other people will start to pick up on that and model it too. We can change history. We can do this. This is something that can be done. It's a lot harder to do when we don't have the bajillions of dollars and control over media and all of this sort of stuff, but it can be done. And especially in this little window of time where we still, average guys sitting in their living room, still can reach millions of people. How long will that last? I don't know. But at any rate, it is here right now. This is an incredibly important time.
I honestly believe if they weren't afraid of it, they wouldn't be trying to snuff it out. All this alternative stuff on YouTube or all these other websites that are popping up. If knowledge wasn't power, they would let us do whatever they want. And the fact that I feel like more and more, like, especially with these false flags that you've seen happen, whether you want to believe them or not, or what they really represent, I feel like they did a couple and they got no traction on it like they used to back in the day, because there was a giant movement to explain why this isn't what you see it is. And I think that was an interesting movement, that actually this pushback is real and it scares them. And when they're saying they're not going to do 9/11 videos, or they're not going to do flat earth videos, or they're not going to do false remedy stuff, and I know why they won't do false remedies, because they're owned by big pharmaceuticals and they're only calling it false remedy because it's not one of their things. Makes me wonder what the other videos and why they're so angry about them, regardless of what you believe in or not. There's a reason why they pick those select videos as this is what we're going to deal with. So we do have knowledge, we do have power, and like, the more I have, me doing your guys' podcast is like such a blessing. This whole show, I'm just like, please don't let my vocabulary discuss James the whole time. I'm like, work at the highest level I can, so he still wants to do shows with me. But when I bring in all these other guys from, like, I got the block is hot, and it's these two guys from Fulton, two black guys from Fulton's. Pat Miletich is coming in right now, everybody. Pat Miletich is about to join the end of the podcast.
All right, goodbye, everyone.
Pat, we're about to wrap it up. But the point is, like, I'm bringing all these other people onto the show, and, they have a different perspective. But, what you find more and more is that we all see basically the same thing. And these people are going to go to their communities and their listeners, and they're going to say, hey, these guys see it like we do it. Now tribes start coming together. And I like, when I do a show in LA, I'm going to look out. It's predominantly Mexican Americans. And I'm like, wow, because when you think of conspiracy theorists, you think, like, look who's on the screen right now, white guys who right? And it's just like, wow, these are packed with Latino guys who believe it all. And then when I do these other shows, there's a lot of black people at the show, and it's like, that lets me know that there's a big audience out there, and that we're all starting to bring them together. And this scares people, in my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, to throw Pat in here, we were talking about how people will disagree on one specific issue and then completely disregard all their good research. The last time we did the Swapcast, I would get people who like, oh, Pat seems like he defends Trump a little too much, this and that, and I'm just like, what about all the other great work they do on the conspiracy farm? And I think that's another... I thought you were telling me to be quiet. Hard to do a podcast.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
Hashtag daddy life.
Yeah, hashtag daddy life. I love this.
Yeah, it's this is one of the things where I try to censor my swearing once in a while, but people know that these are real conversations.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I apologize. Like I said,
dude.
I've got a sick 5-year-old, so I apologize. My oldest daughter's taking care of her now. But yeah, what you were alluding to, people disagreeing on one point. We should all be able to disagree and move on and not see things 100%, because you've got people that believe in Q, people that don't believe in Q. You've got people that back Trump, people that don't back Trump, but everybody has a common thread of, well, we're getting a little weird on the globalist side of things. They're getting a little obvious on some of the stuff they're pulling.
Actually, didn't Jason Burmis? He actually interviewed the people who started the whole Q thing. Would anybody follow up on that? Anybody see that video?
Well, I've just known that like every 2 weeks, another person comes out and says they started Q, and it goes kind of back to what James was talking about, that article he puts out. You can say whatever you want about Q, and I'm fine if you say it's not real or it's real. But all I know is I got information from there that I didn't get from the mainstream media, which was North Korea, Facebook, the Pfizer report, and a lot of stuff. So whatever that represented, I don't know. I can't. I don't believe they're going to allow something like that to roam freely without taking it, like slicing and dicing it and impersonating it. I don't think that whatever it was or whatever it is, I got information that I never got from the mainstream media about like a bunch of stuff that was going on. So again, it goes back to what James was saying. It's like, yeah, you may not like all of it, but within this, a broken clock's right twice a day. So, we could sit there and go, I got a little information from this that wasn't given from everybody else.
Again, you got to take what information you can verify, and then the other information that you can't verify, there is always going to be that. And what do you do with it? And that's going to be your personal determination, to what extent you trust this. But always, we should try to demarcate, what we can actually verify versus what we cannot verify, and keep those things in our minds, because you might have to revise those things that you can't verify for yourself.
And I'm fine with that. I mean, I never plant my flag in anything. I think if you plant your flag in something, you're just going to spin off and control. It's like, here's what I think is going on. Let's see how it plays out. But nothing is 100%. And it's just like, for me,
you just showed more ethics and more honesty than all of mainstream media combined on the Jussie Smollett attack, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy. They want that so bad to be real. Everybody pushed back, and now you see all these guys on Twitter going, "We knew it wasn't real." I'm like, well, then why didn't you say anything? Why did you let this thing fester and become a race war between militant blacks and militant whites who want to start fights with each other? Why the middle's just like, dude, this is disgusting either way, even if it happened or this guy's lying.
See, that's not what it was about, though. I don't think that's what it was about. Sure, there's the automatic division that's going to happen if they never prove that it wasn't true. Thank God for the Chicago police professionalism and unwinding this whole thing. But what it was about was Mrs. Harris and Mr. Booker passing a law, an anti-lynching law against the LGBT community, because it was just to drum up votes and support. That's all it was. The whole thing was orchestrated, in my mind, exactly the way it went down, and they had a bill ready to go. They already passed it.
Yeah, it's gross, man. And again, with these false flag stuff, and we just allow people to. I want to know, how come we have Congress and the Senate that has a lifetime appointment if they can just keep getting reelected, yet we have mayors that can only do 8 years and state senators who only can do 8 years, but yet at this highest level, they can go on until they die. And which we don't like when Dianna Feinstein or Barbara Boxer or any of these people get reelected after scandal after scandal, where where I've been questioning whether elections are at all real, at all.
Think about this, Sam. Think about this. So they tried to get me to run for U.S. Senate. That's one step below the president, for God's sakes. I was a professional fighter. But the state of a lot of people, a lot of pretty big name GOP people were starting to jump on board, and I saw kind of the process that I didn't really like, the people that were going to be paying the bills. But if I ran for Congress or U.S. Senate, you know how I would win 100%?
How?
That I would promise to kick the shit out of everyone when I arrived. They would vote me in 100%.
I would like to watch that, dude.
Oh,
you versus Lindsey Graham would be.
I think the jail time would be worth it.
Yeah, sure. We need a hero, Pat. You're our hero, dude. You're a hero. In fact, you come in at the end of a podcast like a champion. Like
you're gonna break me out of prison after I do it?
For sure, dude. You're the Sugar Ray, dude. You're just winning the end of the rounds at the last 10 seconds by throwing a bunch of punches. I respect that, dude.
I'm wound up. I've been wound up all day on a lot of stuff. So, yeah. So, sorry to come in so late, though. I apologize.
It's fine, dude. We're happy you even made it, dude. We're happy you even made it, dude.
Better late than never. What's your opinion on the Venezuela thing, Pat? You think it's are you?
I think it's a combination of when Chavez was in power, strong arming and taking over the oil industry and doing that sort of stuff that he wants government to take over private industry. Nobody loves big oil either. But I never am for big government getting bigger like that and taking over industries and everything else. But obviously the people in Venezuela were also eating their family pets because we had some pretty harsh blockades on them, So which is what we're definitely very responsible for a large amount of the suffering, and it's my buddies that are all former military guys. Every one of them that I've talked to, they were saying this easily a year ago, saying, don't go into Venezuela. Don't go into Venezuela. You know damn good and well, we've already got radio stations set up. The CIA's already got radio stations set up on the border of Colombia, and they're transmitting a message into Venezuela to all the people. They're doing all kinds of stuff. So
I love your haunted door you have in the background, James. That was fun to listen to. The spirits are that. Right. Well, for me, dude, it's like the eating of the pets is a direct reaction from us and these trade embargoes, these sanctions. And, it's like, I get that people don't like socialism, and I'm fine with that. But we already have socialism, and it's rich people socialism. It is the bailing out of the banks. It's the military. It's the police. It's and it's like healthcare for all these politicians for life. So this notion that we hate socialism is just disgusting me. And I understand what Pat's saying about big government, but you know what? I'd rather the people of the country get part of their oil and their resources that are under their land than these war pigs who are constantly stealing everybody's milkshakes, man. And it's just like, I don't know how this Venezuela government having their oil is worse than these guys who've committed atrocities that have been blanketed and gift wrapped as humanitarian efforts of the slaughter of dude, can anyone tell me, are we not the new Nazis? Are we not the new Nazis?
What do you mean new?
Or like we're just a branch of it, right? We're a continuation, man, or whatever it is. Like we're just a new phase of it. Listen, man,
we're pushing our ideology on other people, and it's
and we're invading everybody.
Yeah. And it's not that it's amazing how how people will, like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast about communism, socialism. We did it all over Central America and South America. We did it all over the world, like using that as a justification to get involved. And if a country wants to be run using a different ideology, if a country decides, we're not. There's Sweden. There's tons of socialist countries. We're not invading all of them. It's like we're picking and choosing. Venezuela just happens to have the biggest oil reserve, and I believe like the Koch brothers are owed a bunch of money too, and all this other stuff. So it is it is one of those things where I think that's going to show up. So you might as well tell us, Sam, because I think that's going to show up on the video. It just said I got to leave in a few, but
No.
But it's all right. But yeah. So I think using these. Every country, the people should have the right to run their country any way they want. No outside influence should decide or dictate that. No, it's no different than a socialist country if that had a huge military decide that, hey, this country's capitalist, then we don't like the way that we don't like capitalism because we think it's evil. Let's invade them. So I do think that
here's the way I see that is. The people never get a chance to decide. Luckily, we have a constitution it's been people have been wiping their asses with it for many years. But if we held our leaders to the same level of constitutionalism that people many years ago did, there'd be a lot of dead politicians.
But isn't the Constitution?
So for me, it comes down to democracy scares the shit out of me, because when you got 51% who tell you that you have to do something like vaccinate your kids, like you've got to pay into this, you've got to pay into that. Obamacare alone. Look, I get it. There's a lot of sick people that don't have medical care. I get it. But you know what? I'm trying to take care of my house here. And what I try to explain to people is this, if they would stop taxing the hell out of everyone, if they would slowly back off the social programs and certainly corporate, that should be cut literally almost immediately, subsidies, everything else, then eventually benevolence from mankind, your fellow citizens, is going to show up a lot more. And people are going to start caring about their fellow citizens. There's animosity between citizens now because they're robbing from one and giving to the other, right? And we see that happening more and more and more, and it creates it creates some animosity between citizens of, hey man, I'm barely getting by. I got taxes coming up. I'm scrambling to pay my taxes. And you guys are robbing me at every turn. But yet there's people out there that, my first example of this is I was struggling. I had a rusty truck sitting out in the parking lot. I bought some eggs. I bought some chicken. And the guy paid for some steaks and stuff with food. And this is literal. This is when I was in my 20s and starving. I was just starting to fight. And he got into a brand new car. And I just went, that's how this is not fair, man. This is not cool. I don't dig this. Now, obviously, there's people out there that genuinely need help and deserve help from their fellow citizens, from however it ends up there. But I'm telling you, the benevolence of mankind would totally blossom if government would stop controlling their citizens in this way, because they enslave them by giving things to them and enslave us by taking. So,
can I ask one question to everybody? I don't know if you guys have seen this new thing that's going on in the United States, but if you get a weed card, you cannot carry a gun.
In a lot of states, that's the truth, yeah.
What are your guys' take on that?
It's fucking stupid.
How is that legal?
I can go buy as much whiskey as I want and and carry a gun. I know a kid I just went to school with who got caught selling weed and got arrested, and it was all over the news and all this stuff, and everybody's like, oh, he got caught with all that weed, this and that. I'm like, they didn't arrest him because of the weed, because it's basically fucking legal. They arrested him because the mob didn't get their cut with all that money. That weed was being sold on the black market at probably at a cheaper price and freely between people, and it wasn't getting taxed. So the mob came in, also known as the government, and said, no, we need our cut. you were doing this without us knowing, and so we're gonna throw you in a box. And that's the thing. But Pat brought up something that I think is maybe an interesting topic to hit on the next episode when we get together, is this whole universal income thing. And we've all talked about robots taking jobs. Humans are, eventually we're gonna get to the point where you can't stop technology advancing, and eventually there's going to be less jobs. And if there's less physical jobs and robots can take those jobs, how do you engineer a society that works? Do you do a universal income? Do you do, Rogan just had somebody on, that's kind of running on that and broke it down. And it's an interesting thing. Would it be a good thing because people would have more time to do thinking things and create things that required creativity and something they were more passionate about than creating these, what we're basically creating now are these robots who go to a factory and do the same thing every day and don't have.
I tell you, yeah.
And don't have.
I tell you though, I see how this is viewed from. You have to think like an evil elitist when you envision how they would engineer society with AI running everything. There's no need for us anymore, right? There's no need for us anymore. So that just remove as many human beings from the face of the earth as you can, and the elitists just hang out and do their thing wherever they want, right? And excuse me, and that's not even remotely a stretch. Look, I mean, if I could have 5,000 acres to myself in Montana right now, if I had the money to do it, I'd do it. And I particularly care to, unless I really want to, see any human beings. How do you think those people feel, dude? Those people are worth billions and billions of dollars. They could care less. We're bugs. Clear them out. We got AI to run everything. See ya. Get rid of humanity. Nothing but point. Nothing but.
Who buys their products? Who buys their products?
The masses are being farmed. We're just being farmed until once we have no reason to be farmed. Once we can't work because AI is taking care of everything. There's no reason to farm us anymore, dude.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. Well, maybe we'll save it for the next one because I think UFC is on ESPN and we have some sports fans on this podcast. I know I want to see that fight, and I know the All-Star game's going on now. I was actually
I on my TV. I don't even watch MMA unless I'm calling fights, man.
Oh, really?
Hey, I get that. I love it. It's a great time to be alive, man. It's a great time to be alive.
But I think that's an interesting conversation because I think we all might have different opinions on the whole, how do you, because we know that without a doubt, that's the road we're going down. Machines in time are going to end up taking jobs. How do you create a world that exists when this capitalistic machine only works if you have people working to make money, to buy shit, and this just in this vicious cycle, so it is interesting. I mean, because I'm not sure there is a answer, but I think sharing ideas and discussing it would be interesting because I think I'm far from knowing where I stand on it.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. All I know, in the Terminator movies, there were no Rothschilds, right? The Terminators weren't cool with lizard people. So whatever it is, they better wake up, because if it comes for us, it will come for them too. So, I mean, that's just the truth. Who knows, man? But I look forward to that conversation. I love having these conversations. Everybody on this conversation, I have nothing but the utmost respect for. The fact that you allow me to do this with you guys means the world to me. I respect all your projects and all the passion you put out and how hard you work at just putting all this out. And man, it's just always a pleasure to do this, and we should always keep doing it as long as everybody's available and our fans all love it.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of practicing what we preach. We talked about how it's important to share ideas and have your ideas challenged and talk to people you don't always agree with. And we do it. We do it in a civil manner. We all, we don't always agree, but we're willing to share our ideas and have our ideas challenged. And I think that's how we grow. I mean, I'm sure we're all podcasters. We've all grown from our podcast conversations and many of our conversations we've had throughout our lives. And I think it's important to do this. Not just talk to people you agree with, but definitely talk to people you don't agree with, because sometimes they shine light on a perspective you've never even entertained, and it really changes the way you look at things. So I think we're all having these type of conversations and showing that they can happen and happen in a civil manner is super important to people, because I think a lot of times every conversation just turns into argument and nobody ends up agreeing with anybody, and it's just basically defending your team. So I think there's hope when you see that these type of conversations can happen.
And you
guys should come to Japan and we can have this conversation in real life sometime.
I can't wait. I'm there. I'm booking a ticket right now.
Yeah. Plus, we'll stick out. They'll know that we're Americans, or at least not from Japan. So they'll get us some extra female attention, I hear.
It doesn't hurt.
But thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Like Sam said, let's keep doing these things. Hopefully, Pat will have. Hopefully, your daughter's all right, because I know how tough a household is when one of the kids gets sick. It goes around the whole house, and then it's with them, and then the other child, and the parents, and it kind of
Well, I'm trying to stay healthy. Let's put it that way. So, but thanks again for letting me jump in here, guys, late and all.
Yeah,
you're the best, Pat. You really brought it home, buddy. You're the dessert. Pat, you're the dessert, buddy. James, everybody, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys.
Hey, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Believe in the ripple effect.